our exam, there's this specific topic which I would like to point out here, that is technology in agriculture. And a number of mains questions have been asked. This is in GS paper 3. The aspirant should be well aware of this, and as a specific example also, because this is a recent issue, they should have an idea about how it is working. Two specific points which I would like to mention here, which have worked very well, is that one is having a very comprehensive policy, a very thorough, scientifically created set of regulations.
Hello and welcome to the conversational video series brought to you by Vision IAS. You must have heard about GM crops or genetically modified crops, which have been in the news owing to their growing use in global agriculture, which has been accompanied by raising debates and concerns related to environmental safety, food security, and sustainability in modern agriculture, not just in the world, but also and more so in India. To enlighten us about the same, today we have with us an eminent faculty member of Vision IAS, Dr. Jasmine. Hello, ma'am.
Hello, Shiranjeev.
Ma'am, can we begin this conversation with this simple question? We have heard about traditional crops or crops in general. How are these crops different from GM crops?
So, when it comes to traditional farming or the conventional crops which we have, how we are selecting the crop is that we are bringing different varieties and we are breeding them. We are cross-pollinating them, and through that series of generations, we get whatever desired property we want to get. And that's how different crops are grown in different areas. Here, we are talking about a genetic modification. Genetic is in reference to the genetic material of an organism, which is the DNA. So, it is our DNA which decides all the properties. For a crop, what are its properties? How tall it will be, how much fruit it will produce, all those features are determined by their DNA. So, in this genetically modified crop, we are going to change that DNA. We are going to alter how this DNA works, and with that, just in one generation, we can choose to have any kind of property which we want. So, this is a very precise technique of introducing desirable characteristics in crops.
Okay, ma'am. And what is the need to have such crops? Why did we come up with this concept of genetically modified crops?
Chiranjeev, we'll have to look at the overall status of agriculture in India and globally also. If we look at the global scenario, we are in a situation where there are challenges of climate change. There is a need to be able to, combat that. Our crops should be able to sustain the impacts of global warming, and, resources distributions are not even. We have groundwater levels becoming lower. We have problems of increased pests and diseases. So, the world needs to have an alternative, a newer technology to be able to deal with this. If I talk specifically about India also here, the last thing where we saw a lot of increase in agricultural production was in Green Revolution. But that was in the 60s, and now the efforts or the results of Green Revolution, they have stagnated. There's no more growth happening, and it has led to a lot of problems. We have problems of overuse of insecticides, overuse of fertilizers, which has contaminated our groundwater, and groundwater levels are falling very, very down in areas where we brought in Green Revolution. So now what do we do next? Those solutions which we had, they are not working. So this is the next new idea. This is introduction of alterations in crops, creating genetically modified crops, which can give us the next revolution which the world really needs.
Okay, thank you. In the context of India, we keep hearing about DMH11 and what the Supreme Court recently did to the central government, as to why the central government did not incorporate the recommendations of a committee, a court-appointed committee, which is called Technical Experts Committee. So could you please elaborate what exactly happened and what is the progress we have made so far?
So you've mentioned DMH11 here. This is the genetically modified mustard. The current status in India is that we don't have any food crop which is genetically modified. This GM mustard, if it gets approval, this is going to be the first crop, first food crop. We have BT cotton, which is another genetically modified crop which we are using, but the food crop, this is going to be the first one if it is introduced. Now, for making sure that we are, bringing in the right product and it will not do a lot of damage, there are expert committees which are established, and the government takes recommendations for them before they can be approved for commercialization. In the case of GM mustard, the current situation is this, that recently the case of GM mustard was the court, and the court has not given approval. There was a split verdict. There were two judges. One was in the favor, one was against it. And as of now, the situation is this, that it is expected that the government should bring in a holistic policy guidelines for genetically modified crops on the whole. Only then, and maybe after further research, this GM mustard can be introduced and used in India.
Ma'am, now we'd like to focus on DMH11. First of all, what was the exact need as a result of which we came up with this new hybrid or new GM crop DMH11?
So, mustard is used for oil production, right? This is an oil seed, and we have a lot of mustard being used all over the India in different parts of the country. Mustard is one of the oils, but if we talk on the holistic level, our oil production, the oil production which is happening in India, that does not meet the requirement or consumption of oil in India. So we are importing a lot of oil. And when you're importing something, that means you are using your foreign exchange, your foreign reserves. That ends up being very, very expensive. So development of genetically modified mustard is an attempt to increase the oil production in India. This will make sure that India can become self-reliant. This GM mustard, the DMH11 which we have been mentioning, this has the potential of increasing the production even to 3 times the current levels. So with that, we have the possibility of saving a lot of money, and that is the main objective. The need is that we want to increase production of mustard and eventually of the oil which is going to be produced from this mustard.
And ma'am, to increase the productivity of DMH11, what all traits were introduced?
So in this, the main property which we want is, of course, that it has to be a high yield variety.
Correct.
So in this, to create a high yield variety, what was needed was that we needed a hybridization to happen between different varieties. And mustard varieties grown in India, they are self-pollinating. They do not hybridize, or they cannot be fertilized with a different species, with a different breed. So in this, what we did was, we have introduced the main property of cross-pollination. The variety which we will be producing, GM mustard, that will allow for cross-pollination.
Okay.
With that, we can create a high-yielding variety. The possibility can be expanded further, because once we can make hybrids, it will not just be limited for this one feature of high yield. We can introduce other traits also. That experimental development further will tell. Another thing, another feature which has been introduced in this GM mustard is that it is herbicide tolerant. Herbicide would mean that any chemical which you spray on the crop to remove the weeds. Now for this, usually manual labor is used, because if you spray something, the crop also gets damaged. It's difficult that only the weed will die and the crop will not die. This crop, being herbicide tolerant, will make it a possibility that herbicides can be sprayed, weeds can be removed very conveniently, which again means that the production will further increase.
Okay, ma'am. Now, to introduce these traits, what science was used? We'd like to know the science behind the development of a GM crop.
So, in the production of this DMH11, it has a lot of extensive research has gone into it. It was prepared by the Delhi University, and it has taken more than 14 years for its creation. So we have this European variety, early Hira 2, and we have an Indian variety, Varun. So these two have to hybridize to create a hybrid which will give greater yield. For allowing the Indian variety of mustard to crossbreed, we first needed to edit its genetic setup, its genetic structure. So for this, what we have done is we have introduced a few genes from bacteria and added it into mustard. So this is the basic concept of a recombinant DNA technology, where we can combine DNA from two different sources. So we have combined three genes here. One is the BAR gene, then the second gene is called the Barnase gene, and the third is the Bar star gene. All these three genes are there in the soil bacterium. From there, it has been taken and added into the mustard variety. When we do this, the mustard will allow cross-pollination, and that is when we can create a new high-yielding hybrid.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we'd like to know about the challenges associated with this GM crop, in particular DMH11 and in general.
So, whenever there is something which you've modified genetically, that means this is a very new product, something which was never known earlier. And when it comes to a food crop, the concerns are very, very serious. Because think about it, like I told you earlier also, BT cotton is there. The BT cotton got approval because it wasn't supposed to be consumed. It's not a food crop. This is a food crop. And when people will consume this mustard, their system is now coming across some elements from the bacteria. Okay, that genetic material which has been introduced, that is going to produce some proteins which were never a part of human diet. So this is something new. You need a lot of very extensive research and data to back up on the health implications of this new genetic material which has been introduced in this crop. So that is one very big concern. The other concern is in the environmental area. Like, we discussed how this DMH11 is in court. The main challenge which has been brought out against it is that there are environmental implications to introducing them. And there are a lot of scholars which have this idea that any crop which is indigenous to India, that should not be genetically modified, because now you're changing its genetic pool. There are concerns of biodiversity. Like in case of BT cotton, now more than 90% of India grows BT cotton. So whatever different types of original varieties were there, they are no longer being cultivated. So it leads to loss of those varieties. Then for DMH11 or GM mustard particularly, there is one very strange risk which is involved, which is that the farmers might start using more herbicide. Currently, farmers don't use a lot of herbicide because they know that the crop will die. But if this crop is herbicide resistant, then this might give them a free window that they can use as much herbicide as they want, which means more of these chemicals, more of these toxins are again going into your diet. The government has made this argument that this is not to encourage herbicide use, but there will not be a lot of mechanism to check even if it is used. So that is one area where there is a lot of conflict and a lot of discussion. Along with this, after these two areas of health and environment, we obviously have the economic issue. Whenever technology goes into creating a new product, like I told you, more than 14 years have gone into it and a lot of money, a lot of funding was put into creation of that product, automatically it means that the cost of this GM seeds, that's going to be more expensive. So when we talk about introducing something in agriculture, we are talking about that sector of the Indian economy which is not very privileged in terms of resources. Landholding sizes low, people have less income. So will they be able to sustain the use of this? Will they be able to afford this expensive technology driven crop? That is another area of major concern here.
That means the challenges can be new and unknown also. We're going to face new challenges. So, do you think India's regulatory framework is strong enough to tackle these challenges?
This, I would say, India is a little bit new to this, like we just have one crop. So we have a ministry, we have a Department of Biotechnology, and they have set up the Genetic Engineering Appraisal Committee. That is the dedicated body with the technical expertise to allow any genetically modified products introduction into the environment. So they will make sure that they are checking all these different aspects. But whatever they are doing, the idea is that this is not like the final step. Like for GM mustard, if I tell you, so GEAC first gave approval, then the government also gave approval, but after that, that approval was retracted. They said you need more trials in the environment. So then they took GM mustard, and in some parts of Delhi and Punjab, it's being grown to test further as to what kind of environmental implications are there. Because there are big concerns on the life of pollinators, and that you can only come to know if you are testing it in the real environment. Because if you change the crop, what happens to the honeybee which feeds on it? So they might not be able to, have a reaction or have an interaction with them. So this is a big concern. And our legal system is also like that, that even if they say that, okay, it's okay, we are ready to go, then it ends up in court, like it has happened with this crop. It's been more than a decade since the GM mustard has been ready, but the regulatory cycle is such that we are not able to get into production. That is why the court has also now suggested that we need a comprehensive policy. We need a new policy specifically for genetically modified crops, which can bring us more clarity and understanding in dealing with more such issues and crops in future.
Now, although India is slightly skeptical when it comes to GM crops, many countries in the West have demonstrated the use of GM crops very well. So, what all international best practices India can borrow?
So, internationally also, I think there's a similar, the issues are similar, the issues of biosafety, the issues of environment, and many countries have learned to, work through that. Two specific points which I would like to mention here, which have worked very well, is that one is having a very comprehensive policy, a very thorough, scientifically created set of regulations. They monitor things very, very carefully when it comes to release of any product or allowing any product. And once that product is released, they make sure all the information is also readily available. Like if you go to the supermarket and there is a rice variety which is genetically modified, countries have made it a point that it is indicated in detail on their labels that how was it prepared, what are its advantages, everything about its composition. And there is a lot of risk assessment also which is being done when it comes to health and environmental impacts both. They make sure that their work doesn't stop once the crop is released. Even after that, there is a continuous program of risk assessment, of evaluation and testing. The second thing is that there is a lot of encouragement on public participation in creation and use of these crops. And I think that is something which is very, very important if you want adoption of any new technology. Because when you have public interaction or when you have forums where the public can participate, it will help in clearing out any misconceptions which are there. Like everything cannot be inherently good or inherently bad. You need a place where that discussion can happen, where you can be informed, because you need the proper awareness, you need education about the positivity which can come out of using a particular crop, how the farmer can benefit, and at the same time what all things he is supposed to take care while doing it. So those learning forums have to be a part of introduction of any kind of new technology. And in this sector of agriculture, it is very, very vital that we also adopt and create something like that.
Now, ma'am, because most of viewers are UPSC civil services aspirants, would like to know from you the importance of this topic from the CSE point of view.
So, in our exam, there's this specific topic which I would like to point out here, that is technology in agriculture. And a number of mains questions have been asked. This is in GS paper 3. Almost every year or every other year, they've asked a question here on use of technology in agriculture, how it can help, what should be done. So I think this is one aspect which is definitely going to be asked in future also. And there are many ways in which you can incorporate technology in agriculture. This is one example which is in current news also, which can very well be placed. That modification of crops, GM crops, this can be written everywhere. Wherever you are writing about technology and agriculture, or whenever you are, offering solutions to write about agriculture, this point can very well be placed. Other than this, specifications of, like, you have this GM mustard or maybe any other product in future, any other crop which comes in the news, that can be a part of a specific prelims type question also. Like GM mustard, UPSC has already asked in prelims. So in that sense, an overall idea about what this is, why we need this, and of course what are the problems here, because a lot of editorials and articles are being written about what are the problems in this area. The aspirant should be well aware of this, and as a specific example also, because this is a recent issue, they should have an idea about how it is working.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for sharing your valuable insights and time. Now, students, we hope you liked and enjoyed the session. We'll keep coming up with more such interesting sessions. Till then, keep up your hard work. Wish you all the very best.